and one. So movements survive and thrive based on the people that sustain it. Opposition doesn't understand that by partnering with lab-grown meat companies, you necessarily alienate a large part of your support base that you yourself have to cater to. A lot of responses towards leaders the opposition. One, LO doesn't really have an exclusive contribution. They symmetricize their entire argument if their argument against us is that the whole food plant-based systems harm the environment or make it significantly worse for the particular animals. One, lab-grown companies also probably harm the environment and also particularly harm the animals as well. They probably still continue to harm the exact same, the methods in which they get all of these cells to begin with. And again, I want to call out the specific sneaky thing that LO tries to do because they give a lot of examples how plants are treated well on their side. But to be clear, we're talking about the particular nuance towards how animals are treated in this particular debate. So his frame of lab-grown companies being better only particularly extends to how they treat plants, which on our side can be reasonably assumed to be still done something well on both sides of the house. Two, partnerships in general are quite vague and uncertain. It can mean different things to different people, to different organizations. It can be a collab on social media or sharing flyers through word of mouth. This is as opposed to tangible benefits of direct investment that directly affect the business model on our side of the house. The questionable upside of lab-grown meats is still not particularly set. Third, partnerships does not equal to direct investment. The motion isn't this house prefers investment in lab-grown meat over plant-based meat. Off is off-clash, and their ambiguity in and of itself is the harm of this vague partnership. Joseph was quite clear in terms of his upside of economics of scale, which made whole food plant make a lot more cheaper and a lot more accessible on our side of the house. Fourth, the vegan community isn't stupid, which is why they obviously understand economic upside. This debate is about what has a better upside given the scarcity of time and resources. That is to say, the comparison of upside for lab-grown meats versus more whole food plant-based stuff is a lot more uncertain and a lot more speculative, while the latter is already tested and something that these people inherently already fucking know. 50, like last. LO says that lab-grown meat is an easy way for people to get into the veganism. I think that's probably a special contribution in this round. And while I admit that's probably something that is true, I'll flip this and say that it's probably going to be a bad thing as well. It's probably going to be a bad thing because A, you just get fake vegans. You tokenize the actual tenets and beliefs that they currently have because you give it or you debase the actual core tenets of what the movement and what the vegan particularly stand for. That is to say, you give them the easy way out as opposed to actually having a principled choice they have to deal with. So as to say, oh yeah, I'm fine with making the conception that you can use animals for this particular part, but anywhere else probably something. That in and of itself is probably something harmful. But the second thing is that you just change the core tenets to make it a lot more vague and ununderstandable. That is to say, if the core tenets of becoming a vegan is to not use any meat or any part of the animal towards any part of the animal to be something that's bad, then I don't necessarily understand why they have to do this particular thing. Extension. Why the vegan movement alienates its major stakeholders and supporters at the point in which you partner with lab-grown meat companies. Why is this true? The first mech is just on analyzing who the proper stakeholder is. Because the vegan movement caters to a very specific type of person. This actor is probably very concerned about the environment and animal advocacy rights. I'll agree with LO. Because a lot of people who choose to be vegan choose to be so because they don't like how animals are particularly treated and they don't like the ethics that come as a consequence of how that food is prepared. Two, this actor is also probably very interested in their own particular form of health. Because a lot of people who choose a specific dietary option necessarily need to be informed about what they can and cannot eat. Why is this relevant in the argument? This is relevant because lab-grown meat companies pose direct opposition to those two common characteristics that are in the average vegan person. One, lab-grown meat companies are just morally gray as of the moment. That is to say, we have no clue whether or not it should be something we consume because we don't necessarily know the health risks and possible effects that might happen. This is bad because it creates further division in the vegan movement because of how untested and how continued vague this particular form of growing meat is. But two, this is probably going to be incredibly suspicious in the eyes of the movement supporters precisely because it isn't natural. It's artificial, right? The movement is proud of the fact that what it supports is significantly grassroots fruits and is able to support a vast majority of local produce at its disposal. Impact and why this is important. On our side of the house, it's just significantly easier to keep and sustain your current support base because they are already well positioned and already well trusted with what you do support. You have a consistent voter base who will support you, who won't advocate or who won't go against you. On side off, you muddy the waters and you create a sense of division because obviously having a whole food NGO suddenly shifting their priority to more artificial labs will probably cause a lot of concern or will probably cause a lot of uproar. This is significantly worse because infighting happens as a result of the shift in priority. Before the second thing, go POI.
Will investors prefer to continue investing into an industry rejected by its biggest client? Yes or no?
I don't really understand the POI. So definitely, you just hammer on me and say I'm wrong because I didn't understand. The second mechanization is on the perverse trade-off that you get on side off. Let's compare the short-term and long-term trade-offs that you have. On their side of the house, assuming their policy works, what happens to all of the current partnerships that they have? The movement doesn't have an infinite supply of resources, so as a result, it will probably result in a lot of whole food distributors getting a significant cut down in support. Why is this bad? Because if you think about it, all of the people and groups that their side supports are very opportunistic and profit incentivized corporations making out a new form of food. Even if the base support comes as a form of them wanting to care about the environment, inherently through the companies that they set up, it's likely going to be a lot more focused on making a profit or making something that will necessarily have to cater to those particular needs more. Our side just has at least more ethical means of working together with actual farmers. Not just in making it a lot more natural, but on working with local communities, which is something that you inherently don't get on off because of the technology that it uses. So to be clear, on side opposition, you align the movement with probably shady actors and promote the very, very diametrically opposed value of corporatization of these particular farms, which is significantly worse for the grassroots actors that we on side government have to defend. So on our side of the house, it's just a lot more clear where we stand. It's very unclear where they stand. All of those reasons, proud to propose.